election series. We do this every year, as you've come to notice. And our next one is on Tuesday, September 11th. It's right on the back there, and that'll be our county commissioners debate. We'll follow with a special What's Brewing on October 2nd with District 53 and 54. And of course, on October 9th with our city council candidate forum. So that should be a really good time for everybody to be here. I also want to thank our media sponsors. How many from the media are in the room here? Several. So I want to thank all our media partners and sponsors. I believe just about every media type is in the room or has been a partner with us. We really thank you for that. So to this, I want to explain a little bit of the format. Those of you, I'm not nervous really. I don't know why my hand's shaking. But long and short, it's going to be important to understand the format. When we get to the time where you get the floor for audience Q&A, I'm really going to have to beat it tonight. Keep it to a question, please, and keep it quick. I know there's going to be a number of questions. We want to get to everybody as quickly as we can. We're going to be doing our very best, of course, to work with our candidates here in timing. I know they're all pros and professionals. We've seen this, and they've got the format. And again, for you, I want to explain. This is what's called a modified presidential style debate. And what that means is they get an opportunity to open, they get an opportunity to close. We ask a number of key questions that the three of us have been working on for a few months. We'll let you get to the easy ones. At the other time, they also get a really unique opportunity. They can ask one other candidate, not each candidate, one question. So, you know, Charles may choose to ask one question and he might choose Brian. And that's how that'll work. Every ounce of this is timed. Technically, most commentary periods for our candidates, and they know this, are 60 seconds or less. We always go with less, too. And then if we need a little clarification, we're going to get about 30 more seconds that they can respond as well. And they've understood this. The other being, when they come to you, the same thing, 30 to 60 seconds to respond to you. And not everybody has to respond, but we certainly want everybody to have a full opportunity, per se. So with that, I really want to also thank and welcome Curtis Vogel from the Central Oregon Daily and Solo Media here, helping us out tonight. Thank you. Round of applause for Curtis. Say hi to Don. Everybody turn away. Central Oregon Daily up there, COTV. And we are also recording, I believe, for our own YouTube. Is that correct, Garrett? Yeah, there he is in the back. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to have friends and family go back or review and rewatch. And I know it's really important for candidates to have that film and information. Also, would like to welcome my partner on the left here from the Source Weekly, who I've been doing this modified presidential style debate now for, I don't know how many years? 8 years. Welcome, Aaron Schweitzer, the publisher of the Source. But most importantly, you came here to see these fine folks who put themselves out there. This is very important to understand that tonight they're really going to be gauging what it is that happens in the next steps in this community. So to that, I'd like to welcome our candidates. On the end in purple there, we've got Charles Bear. Welcome, Charles. We have Mayor Pro Tem City Councilor Sally Russell. Following her, we have Mr. Brian Douglas here. And Mr. Councilor Bill Mosley as well. So with that, your mics should be on. They should be ready to go. I think I told you in your email, as per protocol, we will start with Mayor Pro Tem Sally Russell, and then we'll switch it up when we go to closing remarks as well. So if you would be so kind to kick us off, and Robin, our amazing timer down here, has your cue cards. Please pay attention to those, and you have 60 seconds to share an opening comment with us. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, the Chamber, and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming here and learning more about the first elected mayor of Bend and our vision for the future. I'm excited about this election. Bend needs really good leadership right now. It's important to make history. We've gone through a recession. We're the second fastest growing city in the Northwest and probably beyond. We need to work on a lot of issues. Transportation options, housing that would work for people live here, work here, to figure out better ways to work collaboratively and create solid planning for our future. In 1984, I moved here. My grandfather had full sawmills in the early 1920s. I served on the Planning Commission for 8 years, 2 of those which I chaired. And we worked on Northwest Crossing and a new plan for the old mill. In the last 20 years, I have seen what really good planning does to serve our city working into the future. I'm committed to Ben's future. I work collaboratively, and together we are going to create a great Ben for today and tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. With that too, appreciate everybody's enthusiasm, and of course, with civility, want to make sure we're taking the opportunity to measure in our applause. I assume nobody will boo, of course, but we'll want to keep that in mind. And the other thing I did remind you is none of the questions preceded the candidates. Just FYI on that too. So, Brian, would like to hear from you.
Good evening, thank you very much. There are 2 things that I'd like all of you to think about as you leave here tonight. First of all, it's been said that one of the most important parts of the job of being mayor is to be the, quote, strategic visionary for the city. Something that I believe my record of public service since 1970 clearly demonstrates. The second thing that I'd like you to think about very carefully is that the results of the election in May that decided that we were going to elect directly our mayor. I don't happen to believe that those results said we want to take necessarily somebody right off the council and hand them the job of mayor. I believe that what citizens were saying that night is that they want a fresh face. They want a new perspective. They want new ideas. And that's why they said, and we want to have a voice who actually is going to be elected our mayor. So that is the purpose. Those are the 2 things I'd like you to think about as we leave tonight. And I'll look forward to reminding you of all of that when in my last seconds.
All right, thank you, Mr. Douglas. Appreciate that. Councilor Mosley.
This election is about managing growth. We need to protect the Bend that we love. We're not just another Portland. And to do that, we're going to need strategic leadership. Leadership that will actually listen to the majority of people living in Bend, that's firm and decisive, and that can be strategic about our problems. Mayor Casey Rhodes said of me, your strength for strategy is very strong. You've been very effective in moving the council in your direction. I haven't worked with anybody in my time that's been as good at it. So what has my 18 months on council actually produced for Bend? I got the city to plan for the implementation of the UGB. We adopted housing affordability goals for middle-class residents. We decreased tourism advertising by establishing a rainy day fund, gave neighborhoods a voice through a livability committee, started a neighborhood transportation safety fund, improved downtown safety, secured record funding for street maintenance, brought home $50 million in state funds for Cooley 97, and actually awarded contracts for the long overdue Empire Murphy extensions. My leadership gets things done. Vote for taking control of our future.
Thank you, Councilor Mosley. All right, Charles, Mr. Bear.
Hello, my name is Charles Bear, and I'd like to thank the Ben Chamber for the eventual invite. I'd like to thank 10 Barrel for hosting this. I'd like to thank my fellow candidates for coming, and I'd like to thank my fellow candidates for running for mayor. And I'd like to thank all of you for showing up. I'm sure if you people would like to learn more about what my campaign is all about, you can go to my website, which is globalinternetgovernment.com, and there's contact information there as well. And you can call me up and talk to me or email me and we can chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. All right, thank you. A round of applause to all our candidates for their lovely comments. So, I'm just going to start us off with the first question. As I had indicated in the email and the format, we have 7 to 9 questions for you. We decided that it was more important to do the candidate-to-candidate Q&A, so we have 7 questions versus 9. Aaron will pick us off. I will go though. Councilman Mosley, we'll start with you. Go down the line, but then when it comes to my turn, question number 2, it'll be Brian, and then question number 3. 3, it'll be Councilor Russell, and we'll alternate. And then, does that make sense? All right, thank you.
Hey, Bill. The mayor serves as an ambassador of the city, especially when it comes to welcoming key new businesses and organizations. What qualities do you think you possess in attracting and building a diverse economy and representing our city to people who may want to locate their businesses here?
Yeah, let's start with the fact that I was the chair of the Mid-Economic Development Advisory Board. I've been involved in Opportunity Knox for years. I was actually the president of that business organization for a long time. And then on top of it all, I'd actually started a business in Bend. I know exactly what it's like to do that. I've grown my business from nothing to a software company to about 60 employees. And I had to do sales that entire way and market my business. And I can bring those same skills to sell in the city of Bend. I moved here because I love it, and it's an easy thing to get people to buy into.
Brian, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, that'd be great.
The mayor serves as an ambassador of the city, especially when it comes to welcoming key new businesses and organizations. What qualities do you think you possess in attracting and building a diverse economy and representing our city to people who may want to locate their businesses here?
Well, first of all, I'd say I've been a resident of Bend 30 years. I've watched it go up, and I've watched it come down, and I've watched it go back up again. I consider myself to be somebody, a real visionary in terms of the future, the next 20, 25 years, of the things that Bend requires in order to be a livable city. And so as I would meet new prospective business owners, I would be very interested in what qualities and what type of business they're hoping to bring to Bend. I would hope that they would be people who would be concerned about the quality of life in Bend. I would be concerned that they bring good paying jobs to Bend. I think we have plenty of low paying jobs, but I think we need to bring in jobs that are sustainable and family wage jobs. So I greet them warmly. I think I'm a pretty outgoing, friendly type of guy, and I think they would enjoy their relationship with me.
Sally?
So as a counselor, I think of myself as friendly and outgoing, and I have quite a strong business background. But my job as mayor of Bend is to pull people together and find the resources that that business needs to know how they can get to Bend, what the zoning is, what they need to establish themselves here, and how well they're going to integrate into this community. So I need to connect them with our business advocate, with our economic development department, with EDCO, with the Bend Chamber, with like businesses, so they can figure out how they can find their way into this community. They also need to look at all the codes and the policies that we have developed in the city of Bend to make it welcoming and economically viable. So as mayor, I find that that's my job, to make those connections and to set that table. Because I know as an individual, I don't have all the tools I need, but that's why we're moving forward with Bend together and as a team. That's how we really bring our community forward.
Great. Charles, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay. I think it's easy to get people excited about moving their companies to Bend because Bend is such a great place. So that's not really very difficult. As mayor, I would look into the future and see that Bend is going to grow very rapidly, and it's going to grow to the east. And if you look at a map, it's going to grow on Alfalfa Market Boulevard all the way to the Prineville Reservoir. And that's where the second 100,000 Bend residents are going to be. And so I would develop that for industrial parks. I would develop that for housing, and I would develop that very vigorously for basically the future growth of Bend. And I think that would make it very, very attractive for businesses coming to Bend because there would be plenty of room for them, and that's what I would do as mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barrett. So thank you for answering question 1. We'll go on to question number 2. We'll start with you, Mr. Douglas, and we'll go down the line. And obviously the relationship of the new mayor position to the rest of the city council will probably get a lot of scrutiny. but there are a lot of city staffers who will also be dealing with this new position for the first time as well. What do you see as the relationship between the mayor and the staff?
Thank you. First thing I think everybody realizes that the first day in office, I plan to sit down with Eric King and have a conversation with him about how we're going to move from a strong city manager, city government, to a strong mayoral management of the city. It's going to be an interesting transition for the first time in the first 4 years, which I hope to be able to lay the groundwork so that the second time, the second mayor comes, that we will have done a lot of the basic work that needs to be done. I've spent 30 years as a disability rights advocate in Bend. I know virtually all of the department heads that have anything to do with accessibility over these years. I know many of the department heads, the staffs, the rank and file, those who are out working in the field. So I think they know that, they'll know shortly thereafter that they have a friend as mayor, but they have one that's going to hold them accountable and responsible.
All right, thank you, Mr. Douglas. Councilor Russell.
I think it's really important to clarify that what our community voted on, decided to move forward with, was an elected mayor. They did not decide to change the structure of our council staff relationships. So I think that's, so I not only look forward to a really healthy relationship with our staff and to making sure that when I work with the council, to make sure that we can give our staff a really good policy direction and to figure out the budget where they can implement our policy and our priorities throughout the city. I also think it's really important that the role of mayor not only has to do with working well with our staff and bringing our council together and soliciting feedback from our community, but also being the emissary throughout the state and basically part of the job of mayor will be creating those connections and also providing the framework that our city can move forward. And it's how the tone and the collaboration and the direction we set for our community. It's very important.
All right, thank you, Councilor Russell. Mr. Mayor?
The staff does a great job, and they're kind of in the background. I would try to bring them more to the forefront. Eric King is an excellent city manager. The results speak for themselves, and I would try to have him out more in front, more in public, because he really is pulling a lot of the strings. And he's doing a great job. So I think I would try to increase the staff's, presence and ability to communicate with the rest of the people instead of just keeping them behind the scenes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Mosley?
Yeah, people ask me about this periodically, and my overall experience with the staff of the City of Bend is that the people work very hard, they care deeply about the city, and that we need their professionalism and expertise to actually make our city run well. And I say that unequivocally. I can have various policy disputes with a staff member or whatever, and that happens on a council, but unequivocally we have a fine staff. And we need to really learn, most of all, on how we can actually support our staff effectively. When I first joined the process we went through to set goals was we spent the money, and then we were interviewed to ask what kind of projects we wanted to do. So we gave those through a consultant. The third thing we did was we met for 2 days and said which one of our projects had majority support. And then the third thing we did was, okay, let's put those items, let's put a header on and call them goals. So we spent the money, we made the plan, and then we set the goals. Council needs to be clearer than that. We need to start, if we want staff to be effective, we have to set a strategic plan. We have to make a plan, or set goals, make a plan, and then allocate the resources. And I think our staff will support it if council can finally be clear on what we want to do.
Thank you, Councilor Mosley. Moving on to question number 3 that Curtis will kick us off. We will begin with you, Councilor Russell.
All right, Sally, you sort of addressed this in the last question, but I'll still ask this. We've had, as you mentioned, we're not changing our form of government. It'll still be council manager, where if you think about it in the private sector, the city manager would be a CEO and the city council would be a board of directors, if you think of it that way. But historically, Ben's mayor has sort of been seen as setting the agenda for the meetings and maybe running the meetings. But do you see this new position, because it's elected, being more than that? And if so, how does that change that relationship between the CEO and board of directors?
I think it's true that as an elected mayor, you have a responsibility to respond to the community as a whole. It's not just one group of constituents, but you are now serving the entire community. And you're working also with your colleagues, and they're going to be elected by different constituencies at different points of views. So my job then, you know what? I am so nervous. I have completely lost my train of thought.
Do you see the role being different than what it has been? Because I know it's not changing the form of government, but in the fact that it's elected, does that elevate the mayor to a different role than just being another city councilor?
Yes, I think essentially the role of the mayor is different because you're now directly given responsibility from the electorate and you guide the city and the council. Thanks for going through my jitters with me. This is a big moment for Ben, leadership, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Sally. Charles, same question. You need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
When I ran for city council of Bend in 2012, I advocated for a Bend mayoral election. When the mayor of Bend is elected by the people, it's a big deal, and it's basically you're the leader of Central Oregon. So it's very important that the mayor of Bend, once that's an elected position, which it will be soon, understands this. You're speaking for Bend, but you're also speaking for all of Central Oregon. It's a huge responsibility. At least it is now that it's an elected position. And I think we all understand that. I think we're all glad about that. And I think it's a new era, and it's going to be very exciting, and really now it's going to be great that we're electing the mayor.
Thank you, Charles. Bill, same question?
Yeah, I'd like to be a partner with the city manager. An example of this was on the strategic side. And an example of this was recently we were trying to figure out where we're going to get money from to complete Empire Murphy. And the question I posed to my fellow councilors, and I told Eric this, I said, hey, you need to put the council in the tight spot of making hard choices for our community. With all this growth that we have, there are going to be extra costs. Not everyone is going to be happy with every single decision we make, but it's hard for the city manager to take that to voters. And as mayor, I'd be willing to do that. I can make hard, decisive, tough choices that will get us to where we need to go. And the example in that case was, do we want to charge a franchise fee, for instance, an extra $5 a month on people's utility bills? And the question really is, no one wants to pay $5, that's probably true. But the question is, would you rather have them have not enough housing, or housing prices go up so they pay $300 more a month in rent? I'd rather pay $5 than $300. And you can count on me to take those kinds of choices to voters, and just be honest about those choices in a way that it's hard to do when you're part of the city staff.
Thank you, Bill. Brian, same question?
Would you like to repeat it again?
Sure, yeah. So we're not really changing the form of government. We still have the city manager, if you want to look at it, private sector as the CEO, and the council as board of directors. It's like that kind of a relationship. But now that it is an elected position, do you see the mayor's role as being different than it was and as it has been this whole time?
Absolutely, I see it differently. And as I said at the very moments that I started to speak, the job of the mayor is to provide the strategic vision for the city. And I have a lot of ideas on how that can be done, but of course you have to get 4 votes off of the council to be able to get any of these things done. One of the things that I'm going to concentrate on is having monthly meetings, meet the mayor meetings out in every neighborhood association group to listen for 2 hours to people to come in and talk and tell me what it is that they want to do, provide suggestions and provide all sorts of ideas. The second thing that I would suggest is that we need to put our councilors into districts, geographical districts, so that they can be accountable to the residents who live in those districts, and those residents know who to go to when they have a problem, like the street lighting doesn't work. So the other part is the Let's Catch Up Bend plan that I have, which is going to require a large GO bond. But I think most people are going to look at that carefully, and that's the kind of leadership I'll provide.
All right, thank you, Brent.
Charles, we're going to start this question with you. Ready?
I'm ready.
Tourism has been lifting back Bend's economy through the recession and rebound, but the fiscal year 2018 budget for Visit Bend is expected to be a 9% decrease from 2017. Currently, TRT accounts for 13% of the city's general fund. How much of the city's budget should be focused on tourism and marketing compared to past years, and why?
The answer would be less, and the reason would be people know Bend's a great place to be. Everybody wants to come here. We don't need to say, hey, Bend's great, come here. Everybody already knows it. We don't need more people coming to Bend. We've got enough people coming to Bend. And that's gonna, we're gonna have, people want to come to Bend and they are. So it's, we don't need to, say come to Bend because they're already coming to Bend.
Okay. Bill, would you want me to repeat, or are you good?
Could you repeat it?
Sure. Tourism has been lifting Bend's economy through the recession and rebound, but the fiscal year 2018 budget for Visit Bend is expected to be a 9% decrease from 2017. Currently, TRT accounts for 13% of the city's general fund, funding for police and fire. How much of the city's budget should be focused on tourism and marketing compared to past years, and why?
Yeah, I've taken on this issue courageously, really. There's a lot of people in our community that actually need tourism as a part of their jobs in the local economy. 2017 was actually a record high because of the eclipse that was occurring, so the numbers were a lot higher than they're going to be. If you level that over a period of years, it's still growing. And currently, right now, 10% of our housing is actually taken up in the form of second homes or short-term rentals. 10%. And in a community that is suffering a housing crisis, when our housing costs are going up and up and up, we're continuing to use more of our valuable housing stock for tourism. On top of that, we have a 3.9% unemployment. And I can tell you as a business owner, it's hard to find people to grow my company. You just almost can't do it right now. And the last thing we need is a lot of creation of low-wage jobs in our community, and that's what tourism brings. I don't think we can just step off a cliff. I think we need to make a gradual transition, but I think the transition for Bend involves going to higher wage jobs in an economy not focused so exclusively on tourism.
Scott, do you want to repeat the question? Sorry, Brian?
Sure.
Yeah, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, go ahead, just for fun.
Tourism has been lifting Bend's economy through the recession and rebound, but the fiscal year 2018 budget for Visit Bend is expected to be a 9% decrease from 2017. Currently, TRT accounts for 13% of the city's general fund, funding for police and fire. How much of the city's budget should be focused on tourism and marketing compared to past years, and why?
Okay, I think Councilor Mosley and I pretty much agree on that as well, or I agree with him. I think that we need to take a serious look at how much more we're going to spend on tourism, and I think Charles is pointing that out. People are coming to Bend because people want to come to Bend. I don't think we need to spend a lot of money to continue to promote that. I realize that the law requires so much of the money that comes in from TRT to be devoted to city services and tourism promotion. But I think we need to take a serious look and say, I think we've got enough money going towards tourism promotion that I think we have a lot of other issues. Housing, as Councilor says, is critical, affordable housing, transportation as well, a whole series of things. I think it's time just to kind of take a breath and hold the line for a couple of years and concentrate on some things that are equally as important, because we don't have the quality of life here. People are not coming to see us because they don't want to get congested with us on our streets.
Sally, would you like to repeat the question?
No, that's okay. Interestingly enough, Visit Bend started changing how it was using its marketing dollars in 2014. In 2016, summer tourism was flat, and it's been flat the last 2 years. The actual increased revenues have come from increased rates, but the number of people visiting Bend in the summertime especially has been the same. And those marketing dollars now have been shifted to the other off-season months, winter, fall, and spring. And so what we're seeing is a more sustained visitation in those months instead of being oversaturated in the summer. So as I said, in summertime tourism now, our visitation is flat. I think it's also really important to know that there are really strict laws around how we use our TRT dollars, and actually 65% of the tourism tax dollars go directly into our general fund, and another 4% go directly to police and fire. And most of the general fund goes to police and fire. So we have a really important revenue stream, and we need to be really careful about what we do with it. On top of that, we're really constrained by the laws that are on the books today, which we've tried really hard to shift. But it's hard. We're actually a loss over now because we try hard. We're working on it.
Great. Jamie?
Thank you. We'll start with you, Councilor Mosley, for question number 5. The past year has seen a rebirth, of course, as you know, with the neighborhood alliances across the city of Nett. What kind of seat should these groups potentially have at the table when it comes to making policy decisions for the entire city? And do you think that the current format is a full representation of the various people in their neighborhoods?
So for those that aren't familiar with it, the council adopted a plan that I originally started to allow more of a voice around livability within our community, to shape the strategic direction of where we're going. And we chose to have neighborhood associations, one representative from each one of the neighborhood associations, and then be a part of that, and we call it the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. I don't think it's the only voice, but I do think it is one voice that we need to hear. Too often when I hear about conflicts with growth in our community, a lot of times it's merely because people didn't have a chance to speak and be heard. If you want to make someone really angry, you can change everything around them and not give them a voice. Consistently, over and over again, if you do that to residents, they'll get angry. And we do this in all kinds of forms, whether we call them NIMBYs, which is basically a derogatory term, no matter, whatever the issue is, we kind of put these people down. If we want residents to get in line with the change and to help us grow and shape the future of our community, we need to listen to them. I think there's a lot of, they're not the only voice. I think we need to listen to the building community, to the business community. There's a variety of other ones. We need to listen to all these different people, but they're a part of that conversation, and it's one of the reasons that I was a proponent of that committee.
Real quickly, just 30 seconds for a little clarification to follow up on that. Councilor Mosley, my part 2 of that is, do you believe the current system is a full representation, or the percentage of representation that people assume is happening in their neighborhoods?
Yeah, so there's the neighborhood associations, there's do they represent the neighborhoods that they actually are part of? And, I think you could clearly say that about the Bend City Council as well. Is the Bend City Council actually representative of the city? And my experience is that might be questionable at times, although there is a vote. It is a form of government that we've allowed people, or a system that we've allowed people to participate. It's the legitimate form that gives people a chance to participate. The neighborhood associations they do have open general meetings where people are allowed to participate in the process, and so I think it's a start. Is it perfect? No, I can see exceptions. I can see people being misaligned. We need to work on that, but I think it's a beginning.
Right, thanks for following up. Thanks, Robin, for the extra 30 seconds. Mr. Douglas, would you like me to repeat any of that?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
40 years ago, when I got started doing work in communities, I started in Portland, Oregon, at a time when neighborhood associations were just beginning to be formed under the leadership of Neil Goldschmidt. We had many things going on in our community and events to build communities. I'm very familiar with neighborhood associations and what they can do and what they can't do. And mostly what they can't do is going to be based on how well the citizens who live in that area stand up and come to meetings and be heard. I think the NLA is a great idea. And I think that I think that's going to help us consolidate and encourage more people to participate in the process. But I think the other thing that's really going to help is to have a mayor who has laid out a vision across the board, things that need to be done, and to make our neighborhoods better, and I have plans that do that, and I think that's going to bring the community and its citizens out to meetings. They're going to be responsible, and we're going to have a chance to really listen to them, which is something we do not do well in this city.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Councilor Russell?
Neighborhood participation and really community participation is an art. I think the city still needs to do a better job at it, and it's tricky. When I was elected to council back in 2012, our neighborhood associations basically didn't exist anymore. And they didn't have a funding stream and they didn't have staff support. We restored that all. And so most of our 13 neighborhood associations today are working and they're fairly robust. I think the tricky part is that often one or two or a small group of people step forward with a certain point of view, but there's other people and other voices within the neighborhood associations that don't get heard well, that don't get heard well. And so I think that's our next opportunity, really. So the city restored funding, we have better communication between the cities and the chairs of the neighborhood associations. We allow them to mail out to their constituents or the members, everybody who lives within that neighborhood association. That is all really, really good for our community because it's a two-way communication. For the neighborhood leadership association, NLA, is that part of your question?
It is.
So if I could just go there for a moment. For the NLA,
30 seconds max.
thank you. So for the NLAs, I think that's a little out to jury. It's hard to get 13 neighborhood associations actually to agree, but to create policy that's good for the entire city, it's really important to have a roundtable for all those different points of view to come together. So it's a little out to jury, but I think it's a really good way to have these neighborhood associations recognize the value of hearing each other, recognizing each other's values, and bringing it, and then bringing it to council. Otherwise, they come to council and they're not always aligned, and it's tough to make a really good policy.
Thank you, Councilor Rose.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
could I ask that we as a group get equal time to talk tonight? I mean, I hate to say it, but Councilman Russell has been way over on 2 questions, and that's not fair.
All right, well, we'll take a look at that for sure. Mr. Douglas, I think all candidates have actually, other than Charles, been over at times. Speaking of Charles, you're up. Thank you, though.
Yes, it's great to have neighborhood associations participate in the city government every Wednesday night. Anybody can show up at the council meeting and talk to the council and the mayor. So it's great to have this kind of participation from the public and the city council. There are times that, people are going to disagree. The eminent domain. I mean, we're going to see, if I was mayor, I would use eminent domain to create parking structures downtown by the parkway between Franklin and Greenwood. Now, that neighborhood association would be pretty upset, but, sometimes you gotta do things, make tough calls as mayor, and that's what I do.
Appreciate that. Mr. Douglas, because I was looking as the format suggests that if I need clarification or if either one of these folks do, it comes with an additional 30 seconds. We'll definitely be mindful. You were quite capable. You got your entire answer to part 1 and part 2 then in 60 seconds. I applaud you that. Do you believe that you need an additional 30 seconds to answer anything on that question that you'd like to have, sir?
Question of neighborhood associations?
Yes, sir.
No, ma'am. I think I covered that as well as I can.
Okay, thank you. All right.
All right, Brian's question starts with you. The group that's offering to move forward with the dredging of Mayoral Pond is looking for the city of Bend to put in about $1 million for a $6.7 million project. Do you support that level of funding from the city for the project? If so, why? And if not, is there another solution out there that you think hasn't been considered?
That's a fabulous question, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate that. I want to tell you, first of all, on Mayoral Pond dredging, no city money needs to be spent and can be spent. The city doesn't have the money to put $1 million into that project. The other partners either don't want to or they have the money, but they're not going to do that. I believe that there is a solution to Mayoral Pond dredging and maintenance. It's called the formation of a private local improvement district. It can be set up by boundary, and I'm not going to share all the boundaries with you because I haven't figured out. I've shared them before. But I don't believe that the public as a whole needs to dump money into Mayoral Pond and money that we just don't have. But I know through an LID, we can raise all the money we need to dredge that pond and to make it manageable and manage it for the next 25 years by doing it through an LID, a private LID, not public money.
Thank you, Brian. Sally, same question. You need me to repeat it, or are you good?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, the city of Bend and the community's been looking at solving this problem for probably 15 to 20 years, and I've certainly been working on it for a good 10, and it's difficult. It's a centerpiece of our city. We didn't think we were going to have a dam. Now we know we're going to have a dam for a while. The walls are crumbling, and so we've worked together with the Park District and Mayoral Solutions to identify it as a problem that needs to be solved. I think the funding is really an issue for our community. I mean, we, 5.2 million is what it takes for street maintenance every year to fill our potholes. And they're looking for, and we need 6 million, so how are we gonna get there? I don't know the answer yet, but I'm hopeful that at some point we find a funding stream and we can get this work done. There's gonna be a report at council tomorrow night. I think there will be a lot more options that come to the council, and we're gonna have to work our way through it, because I'm not a fan for taking $6 million out of the next budget and putting it that and taking it away from all the other needs we have. But there may be a way to go, and I have some ideas.
Thank you, Sally. Charles, same question. You want me to repeat it?
No, thank you. Okay, so if we don't do anything with Bear Pond, it's eventually going to turn into a marsh, okay? Now, that being said, I think Plan A, I think most people agree with me, is just leave it alone. It's an iconic part of our city. Now, Plan B, blow up the dam and let the river run wild. And the new land that is created, half of it lawn, Orange Drake Park, half of a community garden. Try that for a couple of years. If we like it, great. If we don't like it, dredge it when it's dry. If you dredge it when it's dry, it'll be way easier and cheaper. And do it in the winter. Okay, not the summer. And that's it.
Thank you, Charles. Bill, same question?
Yeah. One of the big problems with Mirror Pond is really the cost, and that's the part that was brought up. And the Mirror Pond is essentially a recreational facility. And the real issue here really isn't about whether we need to dredge or who pays for it. We need to ask the Bend Parks and Rec District to play fair. They need to play fair with the citizens of Bend. They have a budget that's actually equal to the entire budget that Bend spends on police, fire, street preservation, virtually every city service that we do. And they can't come up with the money to maintain a recreational facility. And this isn't the only issue that Parks and Rec doesn't play fair on. They wouldn't waive their SDCs for affordable housing. They're raising their SDCs 30% to actually provide more parks at a time when we have a housing crisis. Bend Parks and Rec needs to play fair.
Thank you, Bill.
Sally, this question will start with you. One of the most crowded and contentious city council meetings happened earlier this year when the council took up the issue of the number of temporary occupancy permits for concerts at the Century Center and the impact on the neighborhoods around them. Are you happy with the solution that the city council came up with for that issue, and do you think the businesses are treated fairly?
I'm laughing because I didn't actually like the solution that we came forward with, which was limiting the businesses who wanted to have outdoor concerts to free temporary occupancy permits. I believe that summer music outdoors is a really important part for business and for the culture in our town. I thought that there needed to be better work and communication back and forth between businesses and the city of Bend, and I felt that we didn't really ever have that robust conversation. So I think there's room. I think for the city of Bend, it's really important to be able to create venues to have social events around music for our community. So I'm not really happy where it landed, and I'll continue to work on it. But regardless, I do know there's some venues where we have created that don't need the TOCs, and I'm really happy that we've created those.
Great. Charles, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. It was basically a compromise, what they did. And I lived in that area, and basically people are going to complain about parking and noise, and they can go ahead and do that. But, you know, I think we need to allow Les Schwab and Volcanic Theater Pub to, you know, have these shows, and it's going to create noise. That's just part of the way it is. But we do need a big, giant venue, bigger than Les Schwab, like way east of here, like in Alfalfa, where that can hold like 5,000, 6,000 people with tons of parking, so we can have giant festivals all night long, and I do that as mayor.
Okay, so, pardon my cold. I actually serve as the council's liaison of the River West Neighborhood Association, and there was one venue, the Century West, that actually was having problems. All the other places in the entire city were managed to limit their temporary occupancy permits to 3 or fewer, and this one was the only place in the entire city that couldn't do that. And I actually got the River West Neighborhood Association to enter into 9 months of facilitated discussion paid for by the city with the businesses. And what did the businesses do? One of them sent their son to negotiate for them. They canceled meetings over and over and over again. The businesses even refused to simply move the concert to the other side of the building because they didn't want to pay for the cost of fencing. They weren't negotiating in good faith. And I can tell you, as a business member in this community, that you actually have a duty. When you move to Bend, you got a business, you need to take care of your neighbors. You need to be a good steward. That's what Bend is about. So, in the end, the city staff said there was a fire issue, it was a public safety issue, and that's what we ended up voting on. And I actually proposed that we use tourism funds to build a convention center and a performing arts center to address this issue.
Brian, would you like to repeat the question?
Go ahead, please.
One of the most crowded and contentious city council meetings happened earlier this year when the council took up the issue of the number of temporary occupancy permits for concerts at the Century Center and the impact on the neighborhoods around them. Are you happy with the solution that the city council came up with for that issue, and do you think the businesses were treated fairly?
This is a great time for me to tell a lie, but I'm not going to do that. I am not totally aware of every single aspect of the agreement that was made between the city, the neighbors, and the venue. I would say this, as a person who has done a lot of creation of events in the city of Bend, things like the Cascade Lakes Relay and others, I understand what it's like to try to bring an event through the city of Bend and be respectful of everything that's here. I don't have any problem with saying to that particular location, 3 events sounds to me like it's good as you're going to be able to get. It's unfortunate, but on your side, but that's probably as good as you're going to get. And you need to be respectful of the neighbors. The neighbors need to be respectful of you, and we need to stay civil. I'm glad I wasn't at that city council meeting. I don't think I could have handled that.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. We've completed the 7 questions to our candidates at this time. We want you to have the opportunity. You may ask 1 question of one other candidate up there with you. You have 30 seconds to ask your question. The other candidate has 60 seconds to respond. If there's an absolute need for rebuttal, please ask us as moderators first, and we'll grant that for 30 more seconds. All right? So in keeping with the rotation, Charles, you're the person who gets the first question. Who do you plan to ask your question of?
Sally. Hello. What was your as a member of city council, what are your proudest achievement?
All right, 60 seconds, Councilor Russell.
My proudest achievement is actually public involvement. When I first came onto council, I made a lot of changes actually. I created the Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Committee, and what I was really determined to do was create stakeholder groups to work through various issues that were coming through council, to reach out to various groups and neighborhoods in the community. So I feel like pulling divert, and we've done that. Our current proposal is to do that with the Penn Central District and the advisory committee for borough, and then sorry. I didn't expect that question from you. But what I will say, the other thing that I've done in terms of awareness is we used to have work sessions and they closed on the same day, and I thought it was really important for the public to understand what decisions we were making and have it be seen in the press or we considered as a council. I've been a huge fan of those types of things.
Thanks, Councilor Russell. All right, keeping in order here, you probably have already predicted this. Councilor Mosley, you're up for question number 2. Who are you going to ask your question of?
My buddy Sally. So in 2017, in our council strategic planning session, why did you oppose funding for roads serving East Side residents, namely Murphy and Empire?
You know, we didn't have very many discretionary funds, and we actually had a budget that would start setting the seed to pay for, so we were looking specifically at system development charges. We had some set aside in the fund. And so what we were trying to figure out was all the needs across the city and how to use the small bucket of funds we had and use them most strategically throughout the entire city. We recognized that Murphy and Empire were really important east-west corridors, and we also recognized that we didn't have nearly enough money available to us to complete those corridors with what we had in front of us, and it might actually be more effective for us to wait to have developers partner with us and pay for some of those corridors and pull a different type of funding and even look for grant funding. So originally when I looked at that budget, I thought we needed to develop some other really old county roads and state roads on the west side. I thought we needed some other bikeways and other types of corridors within our city. And we had a really important corridor on 8th Street and also in some other areas of the town. So I felt that it was,
Thanks, Councilor Russell.
not enough.
Appreciate that. All right, Mr. Douglas, you get question number 3. Who do you plan to ask your question of?
Let's make it a grand slam, and I'd like to direct this question to Councilor Russell. And this wasn't planned. Bill, we didn't get together. Okay. In 2016, the mayor of Lancaster, California, came to Bend. He came to Bend to talk about something called Net Zero Energy Program. I made that part of my platform. We need to have that program here in Bend. Sally, I watched the presentation from the mayor, and when he was finished, he got a polite spattering of applause from the crowd. I watched.
You got to wrap your question up, Mr. Douglas, please.
The question is, how do you feel about Net Zero program in Bend?
So when the climate action plan first came before council, it was presented as something that would be fully funded by the city. It would be an additional budget item, and I felt that we needed partners in order to implement our climate action plan. So I asked that we rewrite it in a way that we partner with the community, that we had equal financial contributions, and that it really focused on efficiency, and that it would move our community together to find where efficiencies and savings happen, as well as we reduced our carbon emissions. And I supported that, and I think that's a really robust program now that we're working through with the steering committee, the Climate Action Plan steering committee. Although I think net zero is something that individual businesses and groups can take on, I think for a community, I think we can get further faster with slightly different types of programs.
Thank you. Councilor Russell, it's your turn. You get to ask your question.
I'm glad everyone thinks I'm so knowledgeable.
Who do you plan to ask your question of, Councilor Russell?
I guess I only get to reciprocate once. I'll ask this question of Councilor Mosley. On November 5th, 2017, Councilor Mosley, you voted against the expansion of the enterprise zone that was brought to us by EDCO. And as you know, we've brought on almost 1,000 jobs to the Enterprise Zone program. We've engaged 57 companies. We have 23 different companies as well engaged in it. It's been a huge sort of economic foundation because if they do this abatement for 5 years, the new hires are paid in excess of 150%, and after it's done, then the director question at So why did you vote against the most recent application for a new business in our enterprise zone?
Yeah, the enterprise zone, for those who aren't familiar, I think gives you a very small tax incentive in order to create wages that are above the median income for our community. That's great. I love those kinds of jobs. But I also have a degree in economics, and the degree in economics has, when we study these kinds of policy decisions that governments make. And what has generally been found is that if you give someone $50 or $500, a business owner like me, I will not create a job. You can give me $500 all day long, and it's going to pay someone for about, 4 days, and it is not going to make a difference. And so all we've really done is give away a very scarce property tax base in a time when we are growing phenomenally to businesses that would have otherwise created the job anyway. And I'm a business guy. I've created lots of jobs in our community. I'm not anti-business. I love businesses. I've been heavily involved in building our economy. I just don't like to waste our money.
So why did you vote?
Would you like a rebuttal? Real quickly, Councilor Russell?
Sorry, so the second part of the question was you voted against it, but why did you then vote for this individual application for business to use enterprise zone?
Yeah, so there was an overall plan that we're going to extend the enterprise program in a particular area of our, for the whole community. And then I voted against that. I said, it's bad policies, lots of economic studies that say so. And then we had a particular applicant that came to us, and I voted for that particular applicant to be able to receive those, that abatement. I didn't think it was fair to single out a single business, and the council had already adopted a policy that they were going to do this policy, whether I thought it was a good idea. And if there's a clear majority that actually wants to do it, then I actually am a team player. I will work with the other councilors, and so I voted for that particular proposal.
All right, thank you. Time's up. All right. Before we get to the audience Q&A, and of course we'll have closing comments starting at about 6:50. How about a round of applause for our candidates? Curtis and I are going to come down on the floor. We are going to come to you for your questions. Please don't try and grab the mic. We will hold the mic this evening at all times. And Aaron will be watching also for any follow-up questions, but we're going to start it off, and I know Curtis is going to step out over here with our CEO, Katie Brooks, that kicks it off, and I'll go over on this side of the room. You'll notice the aisles have been changed up so that we can get to you. So, thank you.
Okay, if Katie holds the mic.
We can trust Katie.
So thank you to all of you for coming tonight, and it's great to have this debate in our community. My question is, with growth projections in Bend, tell me and the audience here how densification and urban development has a place in addressing the growth needs in Bend. All right, what's your opinion of that?
30 to 60 seconds to respond. Please start. It looks like you have your mic up, Councilor Russell.
So I think it's got a great place in Bend. One of the challenges that we have in building any homes right now is the cost of infrastructure. The cost of the roads, sewer, the water, all that stuff that we really don't like to think about that has to happen. So when we approved the urban growth boundary, one of the things we looked at was enterprise opportunity areas where we really created small community centers throughout our city. And I think I just realized again how nervous I am. I'm so sorry. I just lost my thread. Can you pull me back?
So what's your opinion on densification? How density and urban plays a role in growth?
Thank you. So the opportunity areas really start creating these small neighborhood centers around which we can build. And then I think our great opportunity in Bend is really the Bend Central District. And the densification that can happen there where we can go up. And really, of course, I think as we grow our neighborhoods east, we'll recognize the strength of having neighborhood centers throughout our community, where we do live a little closer together, but people can then move more easily to the services and the schools and the parts that they need.
Thank you, Councilor Russell. Who'd like to take it next? And not everybody has to answer every question. Councilor Mosley?
Yeah, our density actually is threatening our way of life, the proposals before us. The UGB that the previous council approved suggests that we cram 38,000 new friends next door to us in the existing boundaries of the city. That's going to change the way that we live in our community. People don't realize it, but they're angry when they see it. I hear these kinds of complaints all the time. I do think that a mix of housing is good for Bend. We are oversaturated on the single-family homes, and if we're going to do some duplexes, ADUs, if we're going to build opportunities for townhomes, and some people frankly don't want to mow a yard, and we don't have enough diversity. I don't have any problem with that. But I do think we need to respect the boundaries, and we need to be balanced between the growth that's in the expansion areas and the growth that's actually occurring in the infill of our city.
Thank you. Mr. Douglas, go ahead.
I've lost whoever answered the question.
Uh,
Okay, well, let me see if I can take a shot at this. Obviously, density is an issue in Bend. Obviously, we all know that the state of Oregon has laws that tell us exactly what we're going to have to do, whether we like it or not, when it comes to issues like density. I think one of the things we need to do, along with all these other ideas that you hear, ADUs and duplexes and triplexes or whatever, I think we need to start looking broader. I think we need to start looking throughout the county, north, south, particularly. I think La Pine offers some great opportunities for affordable housing, where somebody can buy a piece of dirt, build a home, build equity, and then proceed from there, but just like all of us have done. I think that what we need to do is start to think about servicing with light rail. And I think we should start with a rubber to rail program that I call, and that's trying to have bus service, ground transportation to start out, then to La Pine and back. And I think that's going to start to set the pattern for where we need to go in the next 20 to 25 years. It's light rail.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Baird?
As I've already said, Bend is growing fast. Bend is going to keep growing fast. It's going to grow to the east. We need to move our infrastructure to the east. We need to focus on the east. That being said, if I was mayor, every place that we can make a park within a 10-mile radius of Pilot Butte, I would make that a park. Because we have an opportunity to do that now, to preserve our way of life. We won't have that opportunity in 5 or 10 years. So we need to take this opportunity while we have this opportunity and make parks, big parks, wherever we can within the city of Bend before they turn them into apartments or shopping centers or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. All right, we have a question on this side of the room.
Just a question about, for you guys, what do you see as the role of the city government to provide services to its community using, let's say, the septic to sewer project right now as an example?
Great question. All right, so we kick it off, Councilor Mosley.
Okay, so this is a hot topic right now. The essence of the problem is that we build a southeast interceptor on the edge of our city and the sewage system, and if you're within a certain radius, state law says that you have to connect if your septic system fails. How much could that cost? Well, if you live the maximum density away and you got lots of rocks, it could cost you 80 grand. Your septic system fails, suddenly the homeowner has to pay $80,000. If you live right next to the sewer pipe, it's not very expensive. And so we've worked on a plan over the last year or so and had a committee to study what we should do about this, equalize some of those costs, give predictability. And frankly, I've had residents who've been crying that have come up to me because they're afraid they're going to lose their home, people that are on Social Security, on fixed incomes. The plan right now would basically have the city pay for about half the cost. If you spread it over the entire city, it's a $150 million bill to the city to connect all of you, a lot of money. And that assumes that the residents are going to pay $25,000. If we pass that $25,000 on to the residents, they're actually going to have to pay about $250 a month. And for many people in Bend, it's just too much. They can't handle it. We need to bring those costs down.
So as Bill pointed out, I mean, connecting to this sewer is really expensive. It's really expensive. So when our sewer system was built, 98% of that was built on federal funds. And the challenge is today those federal funds aren't available. The other issue is that we look at, I mean, in some ways it's not our problem to solve, but because there are residents, we've taken this issue on. It's a state law. The county enforces the septics, but these are people within our city, and we've annexed them inside, and we've got to find a good route. We're really sensitive that up to a third of the residents are living on very thin incomes, and we're afraid this is going to knock them over the edge. It's really a difficult conversation, and I'm hoping that we find a solution that really works for everybody in this area.
Thank you. Who else? Mr. Douglas?
You know, Councilor Russell, I'm amazed at your answer. The problem in the Southeast was not created by the citizens that live there. It was created when the city decided that it wanted to annex that area some 20 years ago. And the city had the heavy vote on that. We all know that. It's the way it's set up in state law. But for some councilor who's been in government for almost 20 years, to say, well, it's not our problem, it's their problem. The hell it's their problem, it's our problem. It's everybody in this community's problem. It doesn't know income levels of E. coli. It doesn't go to just the rich. It doesn't go just to the poor. It goes to everybody. And I'm going to say to the commissioner, to the councilor, I was amazed when I read something in a document produced by the city that was given to the folks in that area that said, you know what, basically, we made a mistake 20 years ago because we didn't plan to do this. And this is why, when Bill Holleran says, no vision, no leadership, and no planning in the last 20 to 30 years in this community, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about that kind of a problem. And we have it everywhere. So to have a city councilor who's been in government...
Mr. Douglas, thank you. Your time is up.
Well, I want to take a little time because Sally's had such a great ride tonight.
Well, I'm giving you an extra 30 seconds. Please, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Baer?
Yeah, this is a major issue, the infrastructure, and we do have the Southeast Interceptor. It's a gravity sewer, and I was actually living on Murphy Road when they blew Murphy Road up 30 feet deep, and so I kind of watched them put it in. But yeah, it's a big issue. I would agree with Sally on this. If you buy a house that has a septic system, and then 10 years down the road you say, I don't like my septic system, well, then why did you buy a house with a septic system, you know? So that's, I agree with Sally on this.
All right, thank you all for your answers.
Chris, you have a question on this side of the room? Yes?
So I'm going to direct my question at Brian and Bill. As a long-term resident of Bend, I'm born and raised here, I'm curious in doing research on both of you whether you think the leadership style that you've put out into the public realm of being somewhat divisive and critical is the best way of life for Bend, or how we do things here in Bend, and how would you translate that into being mayor for our city?
Yeah, one of the things that people say it's divisive when they disagree with you. When people were used to getting their way consistently, and a lot of our community has been run by activists for a long time, a lot of people have been unheard. An example of this is we did a community outreach program for our transportation system plan, and you look through and there's all these priorities that are set out. And then you go back to the last page of this community outreach program, and it turns out of respondents, 43% have a 4-year degree, and 47% of the respondents have a postgraduate degree, a doctorate like me. So 90% of the respondents in that case are highly educated individuals, and I can tell you that only 23% of people in Bend actually have a college education. And you kind of wonder who isn't being heard in this community. And when they're not heard, and when they start being heard, people get upset that you're being divisive because you're actually representing people that haven't been represented for a long time. The city of Bend also has a very serious problem about hiding problems and sweeping things under the rug that they don't like to be visible and they don't want to have in the media. And so as soon as you start bringing some of this out and being more transparent with people, then people again call it divisive.
Thank you, Councilor Mosley. And that was specifically directed, right? Just the one question?
No, I think I'd like to hear from Brian on that as well, due to his public statements as well.
Could you just come back with the question a little bit more?
Yes. So as an individual that was born and raised here in Bend, I'm curious if you believe that a divisive or critical leadership perspective is the best way of life for Bend.
Critical, divisive. Let me tell you something. I applaud the fact that you've lived here for all your life. I've lived in Oregon all my life. And I know that the one thing that we do not do well in Bend, we don't listen well. And if now all of a sudden somebody steps up to become the elected mayor of Bend and says, I think we need to do more listening than we need to do talking, and he says to you, we're going to have monthly Meet the Mayor meetings where I'm going to go out and spend a couple hours listening to the constituents in an area. That's not divisive. That's what we need to do to move our community into the direction for the next 25 years. When I talk about a bond measure, a $100 million bond measure, I'm talking about for the folks that live on unpaved streets, 7 miles of them. I'm talking about 300 miles of undone sidewalk. I'm talking about 5,000 undone curb ramps. I'm sorry if it sounds a little bit like I'm on my hot, but I've been waiting for 30 years for that. And by gosh, if I get elected mayor, we're going to get on that, and we're going to do something about it. I hope that's not being a divisive person. I hope it's a visionary person.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. All right, we have another question from the floor here.
This is for everybody, and it's a softball. What are your thoughts or any values on art, culture, and any form of diversity in Bend?
You have 60 seconds for that. Mr. Douglas, go ahead.
You can't spend 30 years advocating on behalf of people with disabilities and their civil rights, and then stand on that platform and say that you want to withhold the civil rights of another group. I don't care who they are. You can't do that. It doesn't work. Civil rights are a human right. They're for everyone. Everyone should enjoy their civil rights. And diversity, bring it on. I don't see any issue with the diversity that we are seeing. When I walk into the City Hall and see a young Hispanic person working in City Hall, I think that person is going to be moving up the line. And all through the neighborhood communities, we're going to have that happening. So diversity, bring it on, because we need to hear from everybody if we're going to be a city that's worth living in the next 25 years.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Who'd like to go next?
The biggest threat to the arts, culture, and diversity in our community is actually our skyrocketing housing costs. Increasingly, we're becoming a community where the wealthy can actually live in Bend, and all the people that are working at the bars and restaurants and the baristas and that sort of thing have to live in Levine. I don't think that's the way for a diverse culture in our community. I've got 4 kids, and I hope that this is a place where they can settle down someday. I actually had someone write to me once with the audacity to say, well, you know, people won't mind that their kids move away because their housing appreciation will warm their cold heart. It's just outrageous. When I moved to Bend, it was because we were a diverse community, and this affects everybody. It affects the diversity of our community, but I can tell you artists don't make a fortune either. And we're not going to have any of that left unless we change the trajectory that we're on.
And clearly a supporter of culture and the arts and a believer in nurturing that in our community. I mean, you know, we're looking at changing and making our mural code a little bit broader throughout our city. I mean, you've heard that I was a supporter of venues, especially in the summertime, for music and other cultural expression. And so I'm always looking at ways to encourage that. I think that's a really important intersection, social intersection for our community, throughout our community in all different corners, not really limited to one segment of our community or another. Certainly as a public servant, I believe that I serve everyone in this community, regardless of who you are and where you've come from, what color you are, anything. So I want to make that really clear. That's my job as a public servant, and I've always made clear that I will listen and work with anyone who has an issue. Our community needs to be safe. And so as we look at some of these issues on the ballot coming before us, I know there's a risk that some people who live in our community can be singled out, and I want to be sure that they have as many rights as anybody else in our community. In terms of housing,
Councilor Russell,
okay, we'll talk about housing another time.
you can weave it in, you can pivot on something else perhaps. Mr. Bear?
As I look into this crowd, diversity is not the word that pops in the mouth. As mayor, I would absolutely support the arts. I think the murals are fantastic. I'd want more of those. I think the sculptures on the roundabouts are fantastic. I'd want more of those. And the music scene in Bend is great. So I think the art scene is thriving, and I'll absolutely continue to support that one. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. We appreciate you.
Jamie, I do have a question over here.
Oh, great. And feel free, if you're able to do it in less than 60 seconds, we'll get to a few more questions. Go for it, Chris.
Thank you everyone for running and being here tonight. Recently, City Councilor Nathan Bobby has been credibly accused of sexually assaulting a community member. The council really has yet to take action, and the status quo has apparently been maintained, which I find completely unacceptable. How would your leadership as mayor disrupt this status quo?
Please. All right. Councilor Nosey, do you plan to start? You grab the mic first.
Sure. So I came out publicly and suggested that, in this case, the councilor body actually resigned and that he not run for the Senate or the House seat that he was seeking. And the reason I did that, the initial allegations I was kind of confused about. They weren't very clear. But then ultimately, his personal attack on one of his accusers was just way over the line. Completely unacceptable on the part of a leader. If he wanted to vehemently deny, say, nope, didn't do it, fine. But to go on and to impugn the character of an outstanding or upstanding person in our community is just unacceptable. And so I encouraged him to resign at that time. We did get attorney's advice basically that said that there wasn't a legal means to remove him. In the Oregon state law, the only way to actually remove an elected official is to have a recall election. So we literally could not remove him. We could censor him and make a statement about that. And I did that as a counselor. And so we looked at our rules, and our rules didn't give us a basis to do that. And I always tried to be innovative. And I said, well, what about a resolution we just, not in our town, that we recently passed? Could we use that as a basis for it? And the attorney said no. So I was active on this issue.
Thanks,
I do
Councilor
believe we should
Mosley.
resign.
Time's up. All right.
So we actually stand together on this one. I stepped forward, I released, I basically announced twice. The first time the accusations were really clear, the second time I thought his response was just untenable and horrible and inappropriate. So I stepped with our district attorney, John Hummel, and with our governor of Oregon, Kate Brown. I asked for his resignation from council, and I asked him to step out from House District 54, and I also put forward a proposal which the council accepted for all of us now to go through harassment training now and with the new council as well. So very, very important issue for us to grapple with on council. I think Bill sketched out really why we've so far done what we've done and why we haven't taken certain steps the community would like us to take. And we'll see what happens next.
Thanks, Councilor Russell. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Douglas, anyone would like to comment?
In terms of sexual harassment, back in the day, guys could get away with a lot of stuff. That's no longer the case. Zero tolerance for sexual harassment. Zero tolerance for racism. Zero tolerance for any of that stuff. And that's where we are now, hopefully, and that's where we'll stay. And
Your answer. All right. Other questions from the floor? And come out over here. Thank you. And Curtis, do you have anybody else also? And how many, with a quick show of hands, feel like you have a question, another burning question out there still? Okay.
So I have a question about the transportation plan. I've been really excited to hear talk about making it easier for residents to bike, walk, and take the bus in our community. But what is concerning to me is to hear a narrative of a war on cars, and I feel like that's a really divisive way to talk about a transportation plan. So I want to hear from the councilors your thoughts on this transportation plan and why this war on car narrative is out there.
Yeah, the war on car narrative is explicit in our state policy. It says that we're supposed to reduce the vehicle miles traveled. And the reality is that if you've got a budget, you can only spend the money on this or that. We have a very small amount of money, and so we have to make choices on how we're going to spend the money. We can't simultaneously spend it on a bike path, for instance, and also spend it on a road. I can tell you that there's some people that think that if we build out a lot of the multimodal parts of our system, and I don't have a problem in building out some of those. I think sidewalks should be safe. I think the bike lane should be safe for people, no problem. But the end of the day is that a 65-year-old person is not going to ride their bike to Costco in the winter. It's just not going to happen. We have a land use pattern that is extremely dispersed, as well as an employment center that's extremely dispersed. And that's why people drive all over the place, is because they really have to. We're in a remote location. The war on cars, you know, I went through the ordinance. My time's up.
Thank you for noticing. Rob, feel free to move those if their faces are turned so they can see it. Gives them an opportunity to see Douglas. Oh, Dr. Rebecca. Okay, thank you. All right.
This concept of war on cars, I experienced it for one of the very first times when I went to the new El Caporal on the east side of town, on an extremely narrow street with cars parked on both sides, and a parking lot that once you headed down into it, you better know where the hell you're going, because to try to get yourself out of that was going to be absolutely a real difficult thing. We need to look at all the different options for transportation. Again, remember, I'm the guy that's talking about 5,000 curb ramps that don't exist and 300 miles of sidewalks that don't exist and should have been in the plan years ago. And we've had people walking far more than we do today. But now we're going to have to get serious, and we're going to have to spend the money to take care of those kinds of walkability issues, because Bend is one of the lowest ranking by, I think it is walk.org, for cities over 50,000. We have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
So yeah, we do need to be able to build our communities so people can move around town according to their pocketbook. And it's expensive to own a car. And it's also expensive to have really good roadways where we can move our freight and our businesses and go from place to place. And people who need to be in a car or want to be in a car, they have that choice and that opportunity. That's an important investment for us. But what's also important for us is to give people the opportunity to basically, and I have a constituent, and she had a mother in a wheelchair and kids in her baby buggy. She cannot walk out her front door. We have not built out those sidewalks for her. We cannot get her safely across the streets. That's infrastructure. We have people who want to commute on their bikes, and they're afraid to. They feel it's unsafe. This is a really important part. And remember that every single person who moves off the road by choice when they want to, for a fraction of what it costs for us to build out Empire Murphy, they are going to make room for somebody who really needs to get there, and maybe even a little bit faster.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, so we need to build towards the future. New roads should be 4 lanes. They should have sidewalks on both sides. Then we won't, we need to build for the future. And roads are important. Parking is an issue. We need to alleviate the parking problem that we have with more parking garages. So this is a big deal. We've all been there. And I think that those would be some good solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, thank you.
This is for everyone. It starts with a conversation that Bill and I had online about downtown events. There are 6 to 12 downtown events that close down all the streets. There are 365 days of the year. It was stated that closing those events off would maybe be helpful for parking. So this boosts parking density, and 30 years from now, when we have another 40,000 people, what are we going to do about parking downtown with the limited access we have and a growing community?
Yeah, it's a really frustrating issue. The parking downtown. I'm a liaison to the Downtown Bend Business Association, so the downtowners as we know it. I've been very active in promoting downtown safety, which has been improved this last year. My business happens to be downtown, although we don't serve customers. So we've done lots on that front. I think you can probably tell if you've been around downtown, it feels safer. There's not as many people sleeping across the sidewalks, for instance. One of the things that the downtowners told me was that they really wish that they had year-round business from residents. If they had a choice between having these spikes, what they really would like is for people that live in Bend every day to feel comfortable to come downtown to go shopping and not to have to fight with parking. I'm extremely frustrated by the parking situation. We did a parking study actually. The city said there were solutions. It's been over a year now. It's been a year and a half. We actually hired a parking demand manager at a cost of more than $100,000, and I can't see any difference in the actual parking downtown. It's very frustrating and it's harming businesses.
Thank you, Councilor Mosley. Anyone else? We need to really wrap up.
Yeah, transportation, I think, want to add something to it. It's important. We all talk about transportation and all the different areas. I think a lot of people are forgetting that in Penn, there's a talk about the East Side bypass. It was talked about 30 years ago when the Parkway was planned. And today, that East Side bypass, which is part of the Empire Connection, which east of 18th Street, I want to see us put a hold on that. Because I want to redesign and reroute the concept of where that's going to go. They don't want it on 27th Street. 27th Street already has 25,000 cars a day on it. You put that corridor in there, it's going to go to 35 to 40,000 cars a day. It's a two-lane road basically until you get over near Costco. So I think we need to look about how we do these things and how they're going to destroy neighborhoods. And I don't think we're doing a very good job of that. We just want to let's throw in another big 4-lane street. Isn't that exciting? Not if it's going to destroy my neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Mayor?
My favorite place to hang out is downtown at Bella's Coffee Shop. And the cars going by, it's kind of ridiculous. I, as mayor, would institute a 10-year phase-out plan for all motor vehicles in a 3-block area between Greenwood and Franklin, Wall Street and Bond. And this would be a very gradual move, and then in 10 years, there would be no motorized vehicles in those 3 blocks, and we could walk around downtown peacefully, calmly, very nice, very relaxed, very civilized. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Russell?
So I've talked to a lot of different businesses, and what we understand in the Downtown Business Association is that every event we have affects the businesses in the downtown area differently. Some thrive, it's their best day ever, and some it doesn't work so well. So there's a little ebb and flow, but definitely these events that happen downtown bring a vitality to our community that we wouldn't have otherwise, and it's very important. In terms of downtown parking manager, we actually had finally a really good downtown parking plan. The council approved it 7-0. We just hired our parking manager in January. It took a little while to hire them, but we did. There are 3 phases to the parking plan. It's going to take us a while to implement it, but thank heavens we're doing it. We're not looking only at downtown Bend, but also the surrounding areas, looking at private parking lots, and looking at timing so people can actually rotate through and people who work in the stores can no longer park on the streets without being found.
Thank you, Councilor Russell. So, real quickly to timing, we want to get to the closing comments. I want to remind you again, Commissioners' debate is September 11th. I want to remind you, how many leadership band alumni are in the room? Big raise of hands. Yeah, it's that time of year. And that's what elected officials have often been a part of. They visit leadership band. It's the time, if you choose to apply, it's due the 24th, and I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that for the next forum, of course, right? But we really want to hear your closing comments, and here's the order that it took based on how we ended. We'll go with Mr. Douglas, Councilor Russell, Mr. Barrett, and Councilor Mosley. Mr. Douglas, you have 60 seconds. We'd love to hear your closing comments. 60 seconds, and Robin will flash the cards there right in front of you.
Right, I've watched her carefully all night. I'm going to remind you what I said at the very beginning. The job of the mayor is going to need to be the strategic visionary for the city. It's a good thing to be able to do that. Not very many people are able to do that. And you do that also by bringing a lot of people from outside in the community together to help you with those kinds of things. I don't propose to be the wizard. I propose to be the guy that brings people into the room and says, hey, how can we do this? How can we get this done? I think the basic thing that we want to keep in mind is that we've got our eyes set on this UGB, and what I see is that we're going to rush out and chase the next shiny object, which is the UGB. And I think that we need to pay attention to what is not getting done and has not been getting done for over 30 years. And I think that that's what before we chase the next shiny object, let's help out the neighbors and the residents and the communities that have been left behind. That's what I want to see happen in Bend.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Councilor. Our future depends on a healthy, resilient economy. Neighborhood centers throughout Bend have a safe, healthy environment that benefits everybody, not just some. After living here for 30 years and raising my children here, one of whom is here tonight, I've seen the changes and have worked alongside our community members to preserve what's truly special about our town. I'm running for mayor of Bend because I know that working together, we can create choices that people need to thrive in our community. People who work in Bend need to be able to find a place to live here. That a Bend that meets their housing needs and fits their pocketbook. Working together, we can create a safe, efficient transportation system for today and tomorrow. And it will look really different from today, by the way. Making decisions that ensure a healthy and stable economy is so important. I'm committed to having your voice and ideas heard, but to working where there are challenges and concerns, and how we can do things better together. As a full-time leader who's 100% dedicated to serving as your mayor, I'm committed to creating a better Bend. Vote Sally for mayor. We're going to move Bend together.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it's been a great debate. I think on September 1st, we'll probably have maybe 10 or 8 or 10 candidates for mayor of Bend. I think all the candidates for mayor of Bend are great people and they'll do a great job. And whoever ends up winning will obviously have my full support. I think I'd be a great mayor of Bend for a lot of different reasons. It'll take me over 60 seconds to go into all those reasons, but please go to my website, globalinternetgovernment.com. You can see my platform, you can see my bio, you can see my contact information, and I think that Bend is in a unique opportunity to lead the state and the nation in a lot of the very crucial issues. And I look forward to the next few months of campaigning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Mosley.
Yeah, Jamie, I have to say, as a lawyer and a politician, keeping it 60 seconds is very difficult. We're loving Bend to death. That's the simple fact of it. We're adding 12 new people here every single day of the year. Growth can be good for our community, but it needs to be managed, and we're not managing it. When we're basically throwing fuel in the fire with things like tourism advertising, when we're already growing at more than we can actually handle. Our housing crisis is threatening our way of life, and the dramatic imbalance between supply and demand promises a future where home ownership and even renting lies beyond the reach of our kids. Is that really the future that we want? We perpetually react to growth in the city, resulting in congested roads and neighborhood safety problems over and over again. Our growth is currently haphazard at best and driven by activists at worst. The vast majority of Bend's residents' concerns around neighborhood livability remain unheard as the city transforms before their very eyes. I'll take on the issues of housing costs, road congestion, and neighborhood livability.
Thank you, Councilor Mosley. To all of you, this evening was nerve-wracking, tense at times, and still very formidable. You did an amazing job together up here today for the iconic first mayoral debate. How about a round of applause?